Hey guys, Woods Farm here, just back working on the Kubelwagen. I think I'm going to go ahead and mount these body panels. That'll be the next step. Did some painting, some of the primer on the inside of the panels so I can go ahead and mount them. I've got the rocker panels completed for both sides, so I can do that, and then I can move on to these panels on the passenger side. I want to make sure they're actually going to work. There's a little bit of warpage here or there from the bead roller. It has a tendency to kind of make the plates kind of curve. And near the edges, where spots where the beads are at the edge, there's a little bit of distortion. I mean, this one actually doesn't look bad because if I worked on it with a rubber mallet on a flat surface and kind of straighten it back out, but there's definitely a little bit of a curve. And definitely along this arc in that area right there, there's a little bit of warpage. I think that's going to pull flat when I mount the fender, and when it gets actually welded to the framework, same thing. It's going to kind of take out some of those slight inconsistencies. At least that's the hope. There's the two outer rocker panels, so looks pretty good. Hopefully we'll get those on in the next day or two. So I have to line up where I need the holes for the plug welds, go around and center punch and then drill these out. It's kind of tedious, but I think plug welds are going to look better from the outside, so that's what we're going to go with. Little Neil Young on the radio. I got to keep turning the stereo down because I get copyright infringements if I have the radio playing in the background. Anyways, got the plug welds, the holes drilled for the plug welds. It's going to be easy to do the top because I got a good surface to clamp on and I can get a nice tight fit. The bottom, a little trickier. No way to really bring that metal in, so I'm just going to have to push against it and weld with one hand, which I don't really like to do, but so that's what the plug welds look like. I just hit that one with the grinder, and there's a little bit of, I don't know, like a little gap around where the blob of weld is. But these ones here, that one and the next one over, I added a little more material, a little more wire on top, and they look nicer. So I'm hoping they'll grind down a little smoother. But overall, pretty good, I think. It just kind of sucks. A lot of times when I've been welding, I've been able to look at the backside, see how much penetration I'm getting. And you know, now I'm kind of blind, right? I just don't know. I guess time will tell. It'll fly off or it'll stay on. Who knows? We'll see. Okay, so those are some of my last plug welds. You can see they look pretty uniform, and I'm pretty happy with that. We'll see how they turn out when I grind them down, but I think for now that's going to work. Those are every 4 inches. I think that's going to be adequate. That's the jack point. I welded around it, and it turned out pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. So this is what I've got for making a piece on the inside that I can weld this edge. It's this edge here of the quarter panel along the top of the fender that I need. It needs to be supported. So I just took a piece of angle, 3/4 inch angle, and slotted it every inch, and that allows you to bend it. and I bent it a little too much, but I'm going to push it down, and when it gets pushed down and tacked in place, it'll conform to the curve, and then that gives me a 90-degree flat surface that I can attach that quarter panel to. So that's the idea. I think before I do this quarter panel, I'm gonna make this end piece here. That way I'll be able to paint it and weld it from the inside, and then I'll put the quarter panel on after I get that done. Okay, there it is welded down. You can see how it conformed to the curve of the fender. So now I've got a nice solid point where that quarter panel is going to ride up against. I mean, I could have probably just tacked it to the fender, you know, the sheet metal of the quarter panel to the fender, but I think it wouldn't have looked as good. This is going to be, and this is going to be way more solid at the end of the day. Lighting's not very good, but I got that back panel on and I put a coat of primer. Just going to let that primer dry for about half an hour, and then I'm going to move on to this rear quarter panel. That's a lot of clamps. Okay, so I think it's as good as it's going to get. Pretty much have every clamp I own on here. Just going to have to take a leap of faith and go ahead and start welding it down. There's a little kink right here I can't seem to get out. I think as I weld it from the inside, I might be able to push that out down towards the bottom. But if I can't, you can't. It's pretty small. I can't really notice it that much. So generally, if I look at it from the front, it looks pretty much flush. So yeah, let's weld it down and see what happens. Okay, there it is, all done. Went pretty smoothly in terms of the kinks and the kind of bows that were forming. I was able to get all of those out, really including the one that was down on the edge of the fender. However, I did run into a problem. This is 20 gauge. Okay, here's the problem that I ran into. It's 20 gauge, and I got just a little too aggressive welding it on the back side, and I blew through in 3 spots. Really close in a couple other spots, I think, too. I just need to turn the welder down and be a little more careful. The plug welds are tricky in the 20 gauge as well. It's really easy to start burning around the edge, and then you get in this situation where you're just kind of like chasing this material that's kind of burning away. But for the most part, I got the settings on the welder down pat. The other side will be easier. I went ahead and hit the welds with a 4.5-inch grinder, and it is a little tricky because what happens is with the bigger grinder, when you're trying to grind off the weld on the edge, you start kind of like sharpening the edge, and I don't want to do that. Plus, I think I was using a 60 grit That's pretty aggressive for such thin material. So I'm going to get the fire up the air compressor, and I got an angle grinder, smaller sanding discs, and I'm just going to really carefully sand down these welds. So I'm pretty happy with how this is working. I just kind of did a quick little pass here, just a proof of concept. The Kubel kind of has like a rounded panel, and then where the panels, the side panels meet, I think it's crimped together. I'd have to see an original, but it looks like the stamp panels are kind of crimped, folded over, and probably spot welded, and it creates this kind of line. And the other thing you notice that there's a curve wherever there's an edge from the side to the top or the back. There's this curve. So my idea was to be able to just leave overlap here, and then afterwards go back and bend it down. In fact, in some places it's going to allow me to overlap. So for instance, right here, the sheet metal is going to get butted up against it, and then it's going to get bent over top of it, overlapping. So I think that's going to work really good. So the front fender went on considerably easier. I'm just going to double check the alignment, but it looks good. And I went ahead and put the fender on because there was a little bit of a kind of a bow in this area, but I only have like a couple pairs of vice grips, and it straightened right out. So, you know, I think I have a hole every 4 inches. If I do every 2 inches, whatever, I'll be able to use the bolts and draw it in. And it looks good from out here. This seam ended up pretty good. There's kind of a little bump here and a little bump here. We rolled these edges a little, these beads a little too far, but I should be able to pound that down, and then I'm going to have to very carefully fill that seam in with weld, but it should turn out really good. That's a little wishy-washy, but there's a triangular brace that goes in here. It's definitely going to strengthen that, so that should be fine. So pretty happy with that. I'm going to go ahead and weld it in place just so it's done. Okay, that's one side done, and I spent the last part of the day just monkeying around with that canopy again. I hit it with the wire wheel and a sanding disc, cleaned off a lot of the rust, and just give it a coat of rust paint just to kind of make it look a little nicer. And I played around with the mounting point, and yeah, if you use the 181 thing canopy, if you mount it back, I think this is 6.5 inches back, it actually, when it closes up, it clears the trunk, and that was my concern. So I don't know if I extended this bar it would come back further, and then there's the strapping, but for now it'll work. I think this summer I'm probably just going to run it without the canopy anyways, but it's kind of cool just to get a look at it and see what the profile is going to be like. So pretty strong learning curve today. I'm trying to weld that 20 gauge. First time I did a lot of plug welds, but overall things went really well. Obviously the other side's going to be better, and it's actually going to go faster because I know exactly how I need to set things up to do it. So somebody in the last video mentioned that there should be drains in the rocker panels. If you can tell me where they are in a Kubelwagen, let me know. I mean, worst case, I can drill holes up through the bottom, and that would provide a drain, you know, maybe up near the front and the back. But they're pretty watertight right now. A few minor imperfections here or there, but overall I'm really happy with the way that this has turned out. So I think the next videos are going to be working on the other side, and then I need to move on and start. I got to order some more sheet metal, but I got to work on this back end, which is going to require 2 piano hinges, which I priced out. They're kind of expensive. They're more than I thought. They're about $30+ for heavy duty piano hinges in the length that I need. Got to get a couple of those, and I can start finishing the back. That's the plan, and then it'll be moving on to the hood. After I get the gas tank, I got to order it. Gas tank will get mounted, and we're looking at painting after that. So just moving along. Got to figure out the seats. A friend of mine said he would loan me a pipe bender. He's got one that works in a Harbor Freight hydraulic press. So I might borrow that to bend the 90-degree arcs in the tubing to form the seats. But as a backup, I'm thinking about just making a base, and I can probably use some boat seats. You know, they make plastic seats for john boats. In a worst case scenario, I might just grab 2 of those. I'm not going to finish off the back seat. I talked about that. I'll probably just paint that plywood black and leave it. I still have to go check out the Volkswagen guy that's up the road and try to get some 15-inch rims, because I want to start looking at tires. I'm a little concerned. Just crunching some numbers online, looking at stuff. One of the tires I'm interested in, on a 15, it comes up to 30 inches. That might almost be too big. So, I don't know. And then, you know, there's nothing that's like 28 inches that I can find in a tread pattern I liked. So, the tires are still a head scratcher right now. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. Still not sure how I'm going to do the hub for the spare tire mount. Yeah, I could fabricate it kind of from scratch, but I'm going to try to find something that I can use for that. It might save some time. I think the real tricky thing that I've got coming up is going to be the windshield frame. There's a hinge kind of bracket here that bolts on. I understand how it works, but making the framework for the actual windshield is going to be tricky, because I got to get a piece of plexiglass or a piece of safety glass to slide into it. So I'll figure that out too. Anyways, this video is just one day, but I think I'm going to end it here. That's probably plenty to make a decent YouTube video. So if you have any questions, leave them below. Definitely like and subscribe, and come back and check out the next video for Project Kubelwagen. Thanks for watching.